All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to talk about two things we all kind of take for granted, but are absolutely essential for our survival: soil and water. As you're about to see, protecting them isn't just some environmental issue on the side. It's one of the biggest challenges we're facing, period.
When you look at a globe, you see all this blue, right? Oceans, rivers, clouds. It's so easy to think that fresh water is just this infinite thing, that we've got plenty of it. But that very idea, that's exactly where the problem starts. And because we think there's plenty to go around, well, our actions show it. We overuse it, we pollute it, and we let it just run off our land without a second thought. This picture here says it all. We end up fouling the very thing we need to live. But here's the huge paradox. Even though it seems like water is everywhere, the fresh, usable stuff is actually incredibly scarce. I mean, we've all seen those shocking pictures of cracked, dry lake beds and heard stories about wells running dry. The way we think about water just doesn't line up with the reality on the ground. So that brings us to the real head-scratcher. If rain is falling all the time, why can't our land just soak it up and hold on to it? Why are we constantly facing shortages? Well, the answer isn't up in the sky. It's right under our feet. The real culprit, the hidden crisis that links water scarcity to our land, is something called soil erosion. This is the process that's quietly stripping away our planet's most precious resource. So what is it exactly? Well, put really simply, soil erosion is just when topsoil gets loose and then gets carried away somewhere else. It's like a two-step robbery of our land. And this shows you how it works perfectly. First, you have forces like heavy rain or strong wind that literally knock soil particles loose. That's step one, detachment. Then, those same forces, wind and water, pick up that loose soil and carry it off. That's step two, transportation. A really simple process, but with absolutely devastating results. And what's causing all this? Well, it's a mix of things. You've got natural stuff like rain and wind for sure, but human activities are hitting the accelerator, big time. We're talking about things like deforestation, letting animals overgraze, and just bad farming habits like plowing straight down a hill instead of across it. Okay, now let's look at the consequences, because this is where you really see the domino effect. Losing just a little bit of soil can set off a massive chain reaction that impacts every single one of us. To get a sense of just how huge this problem is, check out these numbers from India. More than half, 53% of the entire country is dealing with severe erosion. That is a staggering amount of land in crisis. So what does that look like in actual soil? Get ready for this number. It's almost unbelievable. Over 5.3 billion tons of soil are lost every single year in India alone. That's not just dirt, folks. That's our future ability to grow food just washing away. And inside that lost soil, that's where all the good stuff is. The nutrients our food needs to grow. We're losing 8.4 million tons of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the essential building blocks for agriculture. Just gone. It's like taking millions of tons of fertilizer and just dumping it into the ocean. If those huge numbers are hard to wrap your head around, this quote really brings it home. It can take 1,000 years for nature to create just a tiny bit of topsoil, and we can lose it all in a single year. That's the terrifying mismatch we're up against. Okay, so that was the bad news, a lot of it. But it's not hopeless. The good news is we have some really powerful, common sense ways to fight back using nature itself. Let's check them out. The big idea behind the solution is actually super simple. On the right, you see bare soil. It's exposed, it's vulnerable. On the left, you've got soil with plants growing on it. That vegetation is like a natural coat of armor. It protects the soil from wind and rain, the roots hold it all together, and it helps water soak in instead of just running off. It keeps the soil healthy and right where it belongs. So the solutions that use this principle are called biological measures. It's just a fancy way of saying we're using plants and smart farming techniques to protect the soil. They work especially well on gentle slopes, and the best part, they're usually pretty cheap, and they really, really work. One of the simplest ideas is contour cultivation. So instead of farming up and down a hill, which basically creates little highways for water to rush down, farmers plant their crops in rows across the slope. Each row acts like a tiny little dam, slowing the water down and giving it a chance to soak into the ground. So simple, but so effective. Another really clever method is called strip cropping. This is where you plant different kinds of crops in alternating bands. The taller, tougher crops act like natural barriers that slow down the wind and water, protecting the more delicate crops and, of course, the soil all around them. And then there's mulching. This one is super straightforward. You're just putting a protective layer, like straw or wood chips, on top of the soil. This blanket shields the ground from pounding rain, helps it hold on to moisture, and it even keeps weeds down. It's a total win-win-win. So yeah, these individual techniques are pretty cool on their own, but when you start putting them all together, they add up to something way bigger, a truly sustainable way of farming for the future. And look, this isn't just about farms. When we keep soil on the land, we help reduce flooding downstream. We keep our rivers and lakes cleaner because we're not polluting them with all that runoff. We're fighting against the spread of deserts, and we're making sure our land can actually feed us for generations. It's clear that soil conservation is something that helps everybody. When you boil it all down, it all comes back to a very simple but incredibly powerful idea, a new way of thinking about our resources. And that idea is this: more crop per drop. It's all about being smarter and more efficient. It's about getting the absolute most out of every single drop of water and every last bit of healthy soil we have. Because really, that's the bottom line. In a world that's facing more and more scarcity, we just have to remember that every drop of water, every grain of soil, it's all precious. We have to make every single one count. Thanks so much for joining me.
Have you ever been out in a heavy rain and just watched the water rushing down a hillside? You ever wonder what stops that whole hill from just washing away? Well, it's not luck, and it's definitely not magic. It's engineering. Today, we are diving into the incredible ways we protect one of our most precious resources, our soil.
But, to really get why these solutions are so brilliant, we first have to understand the problem. What happens when you just let water do its thing, totally unchecked? What happens when it truly goes wild?
Well, this is what happens. It literally carves deep, destructive wounds into the face of the earth. This right here is called gully erosion. It is one of the most powerful and scary forms of soil loss. We're talking devastation of farmland, wiped out habitats. It can fundamentally change the landscape. It's a force you have to respect.
So how in the world do we fight back against something like that? Here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the one simple rule that guides everything. Then we'll get into how we can reshape slopes, carve out safe paths for water, and even how we can tame those massive gullies once they've formed. And then we'll pull back to see the big picture.
Okay, so first things first. Every single structure we're about to look at, no matter how big or small, it all comes back to one single, brilliantly simple idea. You could call it the golden rule of soil conservation.
And here it is. The goal is to make water walk rather than run. Seriously, if you remember just one thing from all this, let it be this phrase. See, running water has tons of energy. It's got the power to just tear away soil. But water that's walking, it's gentle. It has time to soak into the ground right where we need it. This is the whole game.
Now, the official term for all these clever solutions is engineering measures. And if you look at their goals, it's literally just the walk, don't run rule in technical terms. Job 1, slow the water down. Job 2, break up long slopes so the water can't pick up speed. And job 3, give it more time to soak in. It's all about robbing water of its destructive power.
So where do we begin? Well, our first line of defense is right there on the slopes themselves, especially on farmland. This is where we can actually reshape the land to manage water the second it hits the ground.
All right, now this is fascinating. For gentle slopes, we can use something called bunding. They're basically just small mounds of earth. But which kind you use depends entirely on one thing: how much rain you get. In a dry area with low rainfall, you use contour bunds. They act like little dams, stopping the water and forcing it to soak in. But if you did that in a place with heavy rain, you'd have a flood. So there you use graded bunds, which are built at a slight angle to act like a gentle channel, draining the excess water away safely. Same idea, two totally different designs.
Okay, but what if you're dealing with really steep slopes? We're talking a 15 to 30% grade. That's when you bring out the big guns for something called bench terracing. I'm sure we've all seen photos of these incredible staircase-like farms built right into a mountainside. They look beautiful, but they're not just for show. They are a serious piece of engineering designed to tame that steep terrain.
So how do you do it? How do you turn a steep hill into a set of stairs?
It's a really clever process called cut and fill. You start with the original slope. Then you literally cut away soil from the upper part, and you take that same soil and you fill and compact it on the lower part. And just like that, you've created a stable, level platform that's ready for planting and, more importantly, stops water dead in its tracks.
And just like we saw with bunding, terraces are not one size fits all. The design changes with the climate. For medium, steady rainfall, a perfectly level terrace is great for soaking it all up. In a really dry place, you might actually slope the terrace outward a tiny bit with a little ridge at the edge to hold on to every single precious drop. But in a place with torrential rain, you do the exact opposite. You slope it inwards toward a channel that can get that huge volume of water away before it causes any damage. Okay, so we've managed the water on the slopes. We've slowed it down. But that water has to go somewhere, right? Reshaping the land is just part one. Now we have to give all that collected water a safe path to follow. Because, let me tell you, if you don't give water a path, it is absolutely going to make one for itself. And it's not going to be a nice, gentle one. The runoff will find the low spots, it'll concentrate, it'll start moving faster and faster, gaining energy until, bam, it starts cutting right into the soil, creating the very problem we're trying to prevent. And the solution is just so simple and elegant. It's a grassed waterway. Basically, it's a wide, shallow ditch that's planted with thick grass. The grass does two things. It protects the soil from the force of the water, and its roots hold everything together. It becomes this perfect natural drain that guides the water safely away without any damage. It's a perfect example of working with nature.
But what if it's too late for prevention? What do you do when one of those destructive gullies has already ripped through the land? Well, this is where we have to bring in the heavy-duty solutions.
And the approach really depends on the scale of the disaster. Think of it like this. For smaller gullies, you can often use temporary structures. These are built to last maybe a few years, long enough for plants to grow back and heal the land naturally. But for huge gullies with terrifying amounts of water rushing through them, you need permanent bomb-proof structures made of concrete and steel that are built to last for decades.
These temporary fixes are usually called check dams, and you can tell from the names, woven wire, brushwood, loose rock. The whole idea is to use what you've got lying around. They're not meant to stop the water completely. They act like little speed bumps inside the gully, slowing the water down and trapping sediment, which then creates a nice place for new plants to take root.
Now for the big stuff, the permanent structures. The most important thing to get here isn't just what they are, but where you put them. It's strategic. A chute spillway is like a concrete slide placed at the very top to stop the gully from eating its way further uphill. A drop spillway goes in the middle. It's like a concrete step that lets the water drop down without causing more erosion. And a drop inlet spillway is for the lower sections, where it can safely funnel huge amounts of water through a pipe. It's a whole system.
Wow, okay. So we've gone from these little mounds of dirt all the way to massive concrete spillways. Let's just take a step back and look at the big picture of what this all really means.
You know, whether we're talking about a simple earthen bund or a super complex concrete spillway, every single thing we have looked at today is just a different way of doing the exact same thing. It all comes back to that one core principle. Make the water walk, not run. It's all about finding clever ways to take the destructive energy out of the water.
And that's really what this is all about in the end. By intelligently reshaping our land, by giving water a safe path to follow, and by stepping in when things get out of control, we're doing more than just saving dirt. We're protecting our ability to grow food. We're keeping our roads and buildings safe. And we're making sure our planet's landscapes stay healthy for a long, long time.
The engineering is amazing. There's no doubt about it. We know these tools work. We know how to heal a wounded hillside. So the real question becomes, how do we take this way of thinking, this core idea of working with the forces of nature instead of just fighting against them, and apply it to protect our huge interconnected ecosystems all across the globe?
All right, let's talk about one of the oldest and honestly one of the smartest ideas for making sure we have enough water, how to catch every single drop of rain. It sounds so simple, but believe me, it's an absolute game changer.
Okay, so think about this for a second. The next time you see a huge downpour, when the streets are just flooded, have you ever stopped to wonder, where does all of that water actually go?
Well, the simple and kind of worrying answer is that most of it just washes away. It becomes what's called surface runoff. It just flows right over the land, disappears down a storm drain, and poof, it's gone. We lose it before we even get a chance to use it. And that is a huge, huge missed opportunity. But what if we could change that? What if we could actually catch it? That's where the hero of our story comes in,
water harvesting. It's a super powerful concept, and we're going to break down exactly what it is and how it works.
So what is water harvesting really? At its heart, it's just the idea of intentionally collecting and concentrating rainfall. The first way our sources put it is pretty clear. It's the practice of gathering water from a specific area. Sometimes you even treat the surface to make the water flow exactly where you want it to go.
And that idea gets even more specific. It's not just about collecting it, but also conserving it. Think of it as a method to, induce, collect, and then save that runoff. This is especially critical for things like agriculture, particularly in really dry places, where, let's be honest, every single drop counts.
And that pretty much nails it, right? It brings all these ideas together. Doesn't matter how you do it, the core concept is exactly the same. You're actively capturing that runoff, you're storing it, and then you're putting it to good use instead of just letting it go down the drain.
Okay, so we've got the what down. Now let's dive into the how. We're going to look at some really cool modern engineered structures that are designed to do exactly this, to tame that runoff and put it to work for us.
The number one rule of managing runoff is surprisingly simple. You just have to slow it down. It's like putting speed bumps on a highway. Things like check dams, which are just small barriers across streams, and gabion structures, which are basically these cool rock-filled cages, they create resistance. They force the water to take a breather, and that pause gives it time to seep down into the ground, recharging those natural underground reservoirs we rely on.
And this is where we see a really key difference in strategy. You've got two main approaches here. On one hand, you have something like a farm pond. I want you to think of this like your checking account. The water's collected right there on the surface, ready for you to use immediately for irrigation or whatever. But then you have a percolation tank. This is more like your retirement fund, a long-term investment. Its whole job is to let that water slowly seep down and recharge the groundwater for the future. So two very different tools for two very different but equally important jobs. But, and this is where it gets really, really cool. None of this is new. I mean, not at all. Long before we had modern engineering, our ancestors were coming up with incredibly clever, sophisticated ways to manage water. In a lot of ways, we're just now rediscovering their wisdom.
And just look at what that wisdom created. All around the world, different cultures came up with these brilliant local solutions. I mean, you have everything from a small underground tanka in Rajasthan that's just for one family, all the way up to these huge community projects like the airy tank system in Tamil Nadu. The amazing part is the sheer diversity of it all. Each system was perfectly tuned to its own environment and what the people there needed.
And you really can't overstate how important these systems were. This quote really says it all. We're not talking about something that was just nice to have. The Erie system, for example, was the absolute backbone of agriculture, of society itself in Tamil Nadu. It literally made life possible there. Okay, so we've gone from these huge, ancient community systems. Let's bring it all the way back home. I mean, right down to a scale that every single one of us can picture. Because the good news is, you don't need a massive field or some ancient structure to start harvesting water.
It's such a simple idea, but it's so powerful when you think about it. The roof over your head, it's a perfect catchment area. It's already there. Every single time it rains, your house basically becomes a potential reservoir.
And the whole process is just so straightforward. Step 1, rain falls on the catchment area, which is your roof. Step 2, your gutters and downspouts act as the transportation system. Step 3, all that water flows right into a storage tank. And step 4, boom, that water is ready to go. You can use it for your garden or even let it slowly soak into the ground to help recharge the water table right in your own backyard. So, we've looked at modern engineering, we've looked at ancient wisdom. We've gone from these massive projects all the way down to a single rooftop. Which, of course, brings us to the big question: why does any of this matter?
Well, the impact here is way bigger than just saving a little water. The benefits are massive. We're talking about fighting water scarcity during dry spells. We're talking about recharging our vital groundwater supplies. It even helps prevent soil erosion and flooding. Basically, it takes something we see as waste, that runoff, and turns it into one of our most valuable resources.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought, doesn't it? As we're all facing these growing water challenges all over the world, is it possible that the best, most sustainable solutions aren't something new we have to invent, but something ancient we just need to remember?
It's a pretty powerful idea to end on. The next time it rains, just take a second. Look at the water rushing down the street, and then look up at your roof. The solution to one of our biggest challenges might literally be right under our feet and right over our heads. You know, there are these unsung heroes all around us, machines that are working silently 24/7 behind the scenes, making literally everything possible, from your morning coffee to the food you eat. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most important of these machines, the pump.
I mean, think about it. It's such a simple question, but the answer changes everything. We need water for, well, everything. But it's not always right where we need it to be. It might be deep underground or in a river miles away. So what do? How do we solve that fundamental problem of getting water from point A to point B?
Well, the answer is just one word: pumps. That's it. They're the hidden force, the mechanical heartbeat that moves our planet's most precious resource.
Okay, so what is a pump really? Let's get a super clear definition and figure out what its job actually is.
At its core, a pump is just a device that lifts water. That's its whole purpose. It's the critical connection between where water is and where we need it to be. And it does two things that sound like opposites but are both totally essential. It brings water in for things like irrigation, and it moves water out for drainage.
Now, you might think a pump is a pump, right? Well, not exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Pumps are basically split into two big families, and each one has a totally different way of getting the job done. On one side, you've got your positive displacement pumps. These guys are like clockwork. They push out the exact same amount of water with every single push or rotation, no matter how much pressure they're up against. Then on the other side, you have variable displacement pumps. Their whole game is different. How much water they move totally depends on how hard they have to work. So those positive displacement pumps, they're super reliable. But that consistency, well, it's got a downside for the really big jobs. They just don't move a lot of water at once. Their capacity is pretty low. That's why you usually find them in smaller setups, like an old-fashioned hand pump on a well, not out there trying to water a giant farm.
Right, so when you need some serious muscle for things like agriculture and large-scale water management, you got to turn to that second family. These are the pumps that are the real workhorses of our world.
And in that family, oh, there is an absolute rock star. The one that pretty much runs the show in agriculture all over the world, the centrifugal pump.
And it's no surprise why they're the favorite, right? I mean, just look at the benefits. They're simple machines, which means they're cheaper to buy in the first place. They give you a nice steady flow of water. They don't have a lot of parts that can break down, and they're super easy to hook up to a motor and just let them run. They're the whole package: efficient, effective, and affordable.
Okay, and this right here, this is where it all becomes crystal clear why centrifugal pumps are the champs for irrigation. Our centrifugal pumps, the variable displacement ones, are built to move huge amounts of water. That's exactly what you need for farming and drainage. Compare that to the tiny output of the other guys. Then you throw in the fact that centrifugal pumps are faster, cheaper, and smaller, and well, it's really no contest.
All right, so let's pop the hood on one of these things. The absolute, undisputed heart of a centrifugal pump is a part called the impeller. Just picture this spinning wheel, kind of like a fan, but with these cool curved blades. As this thing spins like crazy, it grabs the water and just flings it outwards, giving that water a massive jolt of kinetic energy. That's the energy of motion. Okay, so you've got this water moving at lightning speed, but speed alone doesn't do the job. You need pressure. And that's where the casing comes in. This is the chamber that goes around the spinning impeller, and its special shape is designed to do one incredible thing. It forces the water to slow down, and in doing so, it converts all that speed into powerful, useful pressure.
Now, there are a couple of flavors of this casing. The volute kind is shaped like a snail shell that gets wider and wider, which naturally slows the water down. The diffuser type uses a ring of little stationary fins to do the same thing, a bit more directly. Either way, they have the exact same goal: take all that velocity and turn it into pressure. Okay, this is my favorite part. All this talk about impellers and casings, it can get a little abstract, I get it. But the physics behind it, it's something you've probably felt yourself. Let me show you with this awesome bucket analogy. All right, follow me here. First, imagine you're swinging a bucket of water in a big circle over your head. The water stays put, right? That's centrifugal force in action. Now, what if there was a hole in the bottom of that bucket? The water would fly out with some serious force. Okay, now attach a hose to that hole, and you're shooting water into the air. But here's the magic step. Cover the top of the bucket and add a second hose that runs down into another pail of water on the ground. As the water is being flung out of the first hose, it creates a partial vacuum inside the spinning bucket. And nature hates a vacuum, so the normal air pressure pushing down on the pail on the ground forces water up the second hose to fill that empty space. And that, my friends, is the continuous flow of a centrifugal pump. And just like that, you have this amazing continuous cycle. It's brilliant, but there's a catch, a big one. This whole magic trick only works if one crucial condition is met. Without it, the pump is just a very expensive spinning paperweight.
And that condition is called priming. Here's the deal. You can't pump air. The impeller is designed to move something dense and heavy like water. Air is just too thin. So before you can ever turn the pump on, you have to get rid of all the air in the system by filling the suction pipe and the casing completely with water.
Now, can you imagine having to do that whole priming thing every single time you wanted to turn the pump on? What a nightmare. Thankfully, there's a clever little gadget called the foot valve. It's a simple one-way door at the very bottom of the suction pipe. It lets water come in, but it won't let it drain back out. So when you shut the pump off, the water stays trapped inside, keeping it perfectly primed for next time. As a bonus, it also has a little screen on it to keep rocks and leaves from getting sucked in and destroying your pump.
So there you have it. From a simple kid's game of swinging a bucket to this incredible mechanical heart that moves our world, the pump is just a masterpiece of ingenuity. It's a technology that literally gives us command over water. But as we look to a future where that water is becoming more and more precious, you have to wonder, what's next? How will this essential, hidden machine need to evolve to help us face the challenges of tomorrow?